I'd like to start with introductions. Myself, I'm Marley Kaplan. I'm here from Sogeti and Capgemini Group. My role is sitting between corporates and startups, so it's perfect to be sitting here with some of the biggest corporates and also the startups. So I'd like to start by introducing Dirk Voelkel, CTO of Innovation for GE Healthcare, Yalcin Efe, Project Manager, Industry 4.0 for Sandivk, and Björn Langbeck, Industrial Expert for Tillväxtverket. Excuse my American pronunciation. So welcome. Thank you all for joining. We've been able to have a little bit of a pre-chat. So I'd like to just sort of continue the conversation and start off by asking, what are your various organizations doing today to adapt to the future of industry?
Yeah, maybe I can get started. Well, this is very loud. So what do we do to get, first of all, I don't think it's a future thing. I think the future is here today. It's just not evenly distributed, is a quote that I recently heard, and I think that's very true. So all the things that I think will define what we're going to do in the next 5 to 10 years are already visible today. And as GE is a big company, and the part that I work is life sciences, which is really a focus part to develop new tools for creating technology to enable other companies to develop new therapies for molecules or cell therapies. And that will be impacted by many different new technologies. So digital is one piece that's, of course, everywhere, and we're going to hear more about that. But also additive manufacturing is one piece where we get much faster, our cycle times get much faster, so we can develop faster, is another piece. And then new biology is a whole new other space that would warrant a whole conference. Genomics, you think about sequencing, all of those things. So there's so much technology available today that we're starting to work with. And what we're doing is, we're, of course, investing heavily into our own research and development, but we are reaching way more out to the startup community, because for every idea that we have internally, there are thousands of ideas that people have externally. So we want to work and really collaborate with people, with startup companies, with bigger companies, wherever ideas are coming from.
Yeah, I think we have a similar environment like the GE has. We are a really old company. Sandivk has a history of like 150 years. And if you look at the Sandivk Coromandel brand, it is a history of like 75 years. So if you look the previous years, when the Industry 3 came, we were already there. So we actually lived through the Industry 3.0, and now it is time to Industry 4.0. And if we look at what we are doing today, everything starts from the executive level. We decided that digital is one of our main focus areas during upcoming years. So starting from the top, we try to see what we can do on the bottom, and it requires a decentralization of each unit so that they can do their own research, their own process management, their own improvements on their own. If you look at the Industry 4.0, it requires actually a lot of agile iteration, trying, failing, doing it again, and try to get something useful for the company. And it requires those decentralized units. And I think there's a lot of rooms for the startup in that sense, because we are a big company. We cannot be really as agile as we wanted to be. In that sense, a startup company can actually fill in and help us with those agile iterations. I see a lot of room for those startups to help with us, and I see a lot of fruit that will come up from this cooperation.
Yeah, and Bjorn, your area kind of touches in a different aspect.
It's a little bit different coming from a government agency, but what is the purpose of us? Well, Tillväxtverket, we work with growth in SMEs, companies with less than 250 employees. That means that these companies are quite important, but they don't have the resources as the large ones here to my side has. They can work with special invitations for startups and so on. They can work close to them, but the small companies, they cannot. And in Sweden, we have 1.1 million people working in industry and industrial service companies. Half of them are employed in companies with less than 250 people working there. So half of the workforce in Swedish industry is depending on on the large ones as the customers, but they're also very important for them to develop themselves. But how could they develop when they don't have the resources? So we are here to find an agenda or actually a meeting place where the traditional industrial companies can meet the startup companies in a similar way as the large ones can do. So that's our aim of being here today. We have the startup program, which is outside here where we promote the startups, but we also work with industrial SMEs to have them to step up and get on with the digitalization and the Industry 4.0.
Yeah, and you all touch upon, of course, the industrial aspect. So what would you say are the most exciting opportunities or perhaps even threats that you're experiencing today within your organizations?
Well, I would say that we have already talked to a lot of startups, and we are. I think we can find some startups here that we can help in doing business with traditional industry, but also we hope to be able to find companies that we can say to the traditional industry, well, here are some new ideas, some new possibilities, new ways of doing business, new business opportunities, and the way of approaching the market, because the industrial companies, they tend to be a little bit slow on this. Speed is rather fast today, but the industrial companies, they tend to be a little bit slower than the rest.
Would you like to challenge him?
Yeah. No, I actually have to agree fully, because I think if there's one thing that is scary at the same time as really a huge opportunity is actually the speed where things are happening. And I think we had the conversation before. I mean, as a big company, you're under threat in a sense. We used to feel very safe, right? The big company, but you know, when with the whole Nokia story, right? You can be disrupted and things can happen very quickly. And I mean, GE actually, if you look at our stock price, we're not in the best position right now, but we're working through that. And I think innovation is the way forward, and we need to find ways to work with new companies and really get that spirit. And I think when you ask about what do you see in our companies, there is a spirit change. I think the senior management and others are realizing it's not business as usual. We need to change, and we actually have to actively work on new opportunities to tap into innovation.
I completely agree with that. If you look at the Sandivk also, that is a big organization that cannot change that fast. On the other hand, when the Industry 4.0 it comes with a lot of changes, both on the organization, both on how people work, both on what the product is. If you think about like a simple MP3 that we used to use 10 years before, and it feels right now is like it's something like in 100 years before. Like you feel like you never used it. So in that sense, if you look for the market, nobody wants to be the next Nokia. Everybody's a bit scared. On the other hand, if we really think about which service that we can provide to our customer, and there lies the opportunity that to improve the experience that our customer has, and we can grasp even larger market share than what we have today.
Would you like to maybe talk a little bit more about some examples or projects that you've seen that have been impacted by technology and the speed, that have maybe collaborations with startups that have moved it along quicker?
Yeah, I can give one example, and it's basically visible out there if you go up the stairs. It's a VR demo of a new building that we put out, like it's Testa Center, which is a space that we created to do process development for startups. So startups can come in and develop, basically use that as a service to develop their molecules faster through the pipeline. And I mean, we had a virtual version as a VR before we actually had the building. Now you can walk through it, and I did that before the building was up. Now the building is up, and now we actually equipped the lab with our current instruments. It's not real. I mean, we have also instruments there, of course, but it's we can actually do that for interacting with our customers, show them lab setup. We use technology like that to do user experience studies, as an example. So the whole VR example that we have here. The other example is the additive manufacturing, something that's a new technology. We have actually invested. GE acquired Arcam for the aviation business here in Sweden, but it's something that we actively use. And we will have, in the next 10 years, we expect that 70% of our products will have additive manufactured or 3D printed parts in the machines, be it plastic parts or metal parts. So that's happening now. I mean, it's very rapid, and we have the first product small components of a product being manufactured that way, but it wouldn't have been possible with an early investment into learning about the technology and actually using it. But it's of course small right now, but it's the point to grow from.
And I agree with that. If we look what we do as EMO, as like one of our largest insert plant, we try to actively participate with the other startups today. Not only startups, maybe young entrepreneurs also. And one of the examples is like the EMO challenge that we call today. So any entrepreneur, any startup that come with the ideas that is inside Industry 4 and try to do or implement it with us. And we will, as EMO, help them as much as we can. And we can try to mentor their ideas and make it more possible to implement in the reality. On the other hand, we are also changing our service from, if you think about the Sandivk Coromant, we always have the product. Like it could be an insert, it could be a tool, it could be like a big truck that you are using in the mining industry. But we started to have different type of product today. We give a service of digital, which is called, for example, Coroplus platform, that you can have your information on your production information in as a digital service. It's completely different from what we have done previous years than today.
A lot of the future business is about information. You need to be able to open up for information. If you order something on the internet, you can follow your package. It's packed, it's shipped, and so on. You cannot see exactly where it is at over the world, but you can see basically when is it going to come. But if you are a customer to a small company and you order some parts, then you cannot log into a web page at that supplier and see how far has my order come, when it's going to be shipped and so on. You have to call the production manager and he runs out in the factory and he checks out what is going on and so on, and then he calls back or sends a mail or whatever. This is a speed and an information that is not possible to live with in the future, because you must let your customers access the information about how you are doing. That is also a matter of trust. You must be able to open up your systems without anyone interfering in them. So you must let your customers be active in there. And we see that among the smaller companies, we see a lot of questions, and what they want to do is to have sort of monitoring systems, gathering information from systems and sort of a dashboard information within the company, but also as soon as you have it on the dashboard, you can provide it also to your customers, and you can let them know. So when GE is ordering something from a small company, you can check in, is it going to be here delivered on time or not? And that is not possible today without interference by the production manager, and that's too old and too slow.
And I think I'd like to build on that, because I think it's a great example, because we need to have that interconnectivity, so we get the information, but then the step after that is actually, what do you do with that information? And I think it can be still a person looking at it, but then we think about artificial intelligence, machine learning, that can actually allow us to see patterns that we as humans might not be able to see, because the amount of information is just tremendous. So how do we deal with that, and how do we learn from that in an automated way? I think that's another whole area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, that can actually build on the information once it's available to help us to identify what needs to be done with it, what's the action that we need to take out of it. And I think that's the next big technology move that we're going to see.
And
I would like to add one point there as well. It's not only actually process and the technology that changes, it also changes how we live through our life or our work. If you look at like 50 years ago, we had those 8 to 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock work that we go there, we're practically there, and when we leave the work, we are disconnected or from our work. It is not that way anyway in today. So you basically are connected all the time. Not all the machines, not all the processes that is connected. It is you also connected all the time. So it becomes harder and harder to differentiate. Okay, what am I doing right now? Is it a work, or is it my private life, or where am I drawing that line? It's also becoming blurry and blurry.
And it's really interesting to hear you say that, because of course your backgrounds come from industry, machinery, hardware, manufacturing, physical products, and you were talking to how it's all about the data and information. how much do you think now industry companies have to see themselves as a software service company? What's that shift looking like versus being manufacturing and being about the hardware and product?
Well, I would say that the industrial companies providing products, you have a lot of suppliers that are their business is to provide products. And even though we have a lot of things going on in software and so on, we have an enormously amount of products that needs to be part of hardware. Clothing, housing, household appliances, computers, telephones, whatever, TV sets, screens, and everything is physical products. So the need for physical products will not go down, but it's the need for services to add on to this that will increase, and that is sort of an interesting change that you add on services. For example, I would say that the augmented reality will be something that is really, really interesting in the future, because when you run your machinery day around, you have a stop all of a sudden, and you need to have an expert to be able to solve the problem and to get started again. And today, if it's a big thing, you have to call in someone. I'm sure that in Gimo you have a lot of technicians that could be called in if something is happening today on a Saturday. But in the future, we could bring in this expert by using augmented reality instead, and he or she can help us to start our machinery. And this gives the possibility for the small companies to run all day around in a way that they have not been able to do before. So there are some new things that you can expand your market, because you can use your equipment more efficient, you can use it in more hours during the day, and you can still have expert knowledge possible to adapt if you have a breakdown for some reason. So there are some new things, and it's important for the small industrial companies to understand what is happening now and to adopt to this. So they can expand, they can change their own way of working, even though they're not changing their business model.
Yeah. So it's more about the technology helping the actual production of the goods. And you were talking a bit more about services,
Yeah.
I believe.
Indeed. I also believe that the product will be continually be there. We are going to still selling our products, but on the other hand, the technology, Industry 4 or digitalization is forcing us to think about more and more creative ways to create products that is actually a service. We have an example that, for example, we are selling inserts, and insert may be used by our customers to open a hole in a workpiece. The question is, can we sell the hole itself to our customers rather than selling the insert? Is it a so futuristic idea, or can it be another company that comes into the market and just starts selling those holes, and suddenly we are like out of the business? Can it happen? So you have to produce what you are producing today, but you have to be open about those innovative ideas that can actually improve our customer experience. How convenient that could be for a customer to buy 7 holes for their pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what has really changed is from where we were. We were hardware box builders, basically, as a business in general. And software was more or less an afterthought. And we realized a few years back that we are actually doing a lot more software. And we changed our model that actually we tried to think about software early on. And that changes also how and what do we develop in hardware, because you can do a lot of things in software that you couldn't do maybe 5 years ago. So you change the way how and what you develop in hardware as well. So I think that's a major shift. And one other piece where we struggle, to be honest, but that's also where startups or other companies can help us with, is our business models. I mean, we have a business model that's very often we create a physical product that we sell. And that goes like, we ship it, we get money back. There's a transaction, but software is very often just an add-on because it's nicer, makes it easier to use. And how do we change from that business model into something that's more subscription-based or some other ways, digital, cloud-enabled, all those services? We have a really hard time to change our existing business model into new models, because actually the business models work really well. why should we change? So it's typical innovator's dilemma, because the things what we do works actually really well. Why should we change? But I think that's where we need ideas and input from startups who have other ideas, prove it out and come to a certain scale, and then they can actually work together and maybe find a way to actually adopt those business models as well.
So if the machine's not broken, don't fix it, but also you have to get ahead of it.
You have to do both, right? And we want to fix, I mean, our CEO always says we need to fix the roof while the sun is shining. We don't want to wait until there's rainy weather and it's weather really bad. So in a sense, we need to go through the change while things are going well. But that's really hard because the burning platform is not there.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for sharing. I think this is an ongoing conversation, of course. Björn has to run off to his next panel if you want to catch that at the industry stage.
Yeah, you go to the industry stage.
Yes.
It's a 5-minute walk.
Yes. So I'd like to thank our panelists, and I believe that we will stay up just a few minutes longer for some questions. So thank you, Björn, for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the audience that you'd like to ask to Sandvik or GE?
You have to use the microphone
Is
box.
there a microphone?
It's the box here.
Ah, okay.
The cube.
Am I supposed to throw this at the audience? Okay. Any questions? Can I pass it to you?
There's one.
What?
Here's one in the
Here,
middle.
okay. Maybe you can just, I don't ready? Oh, there.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. And my name is Tina. I'm from KDH, and we are researchers, but at the same time, we start up our company about we are building technology used for stress reduction. And so the question is that if we want to get more resource from the big industry and the big enterprise, how can we cooperate? Yeah.
I can straight ahead answer that question. First of all, like I mentioned, we have a challenge that is called Human Challenge. So anybody can participate in that challenge. So in that case, we can even help you to develop your idea or your startup further in the future. That could be an answer for you. And on the other side, in any case that you have an idea and you need from a larger company, it is just contact with the right person. In this case, for example, if you just mail me and ask me, okay, we have this type of new startup and we are looking for this stress reduction, which is very plausible for us as a big company, and what you probably need, maybe people or the resources, just ask. Yeah. I think that's enough.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, first of all, we have a webpage where you can go and find GE within GE, the different businesses, and you can find a contact partner there. We have active scouting groups that go out and actually talk to startup companies and not just wait until they're coming to us, but actually we go out and talk to them. We're at conferences, we're at different venues where you can actually get in contact. Those are probably the best ways to actually get in contact, but also come to talk to us afterwards and find someone to talk to.
Thank you.
And anyone who wears this blue shirt is from GE, you can use them as well.
And we have a big stand over there. It doesn't say Sandvik, but you will see those gray colors everywhere and yellow colors. Just come and ask.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of the day.